Hello everyone, it's Chocolate here, finally for my 14-5 gear guide companion video. There's a lot of stuff happened since my last one, since I kind of skipped 2 months due to being way too busy, and we had 2 CB on the same cycle, so it kind of felt not really worth it putting in the extra hours to do that. However, now it's all good. I'm even going to do another video probably about all the new stuff coming to the game and to kind of give some info about next CB and where we currently stand on that, since we've got a decent idea of what's going to happen with that. Even though CR kind of changed the schedule and timeline, it's looking like it's going to be a bit more stable now. So yeah, moving into it as usual, top to bottom, and I'm going to have some comments about almost all the units. Yeah, just because it's been a while and there's some stuff I've got to talk about. So first up, Rima. She's super critical now in offense and defense in PvP, just because there's so much cleave. So you not only do need her for position manipulation, but also for defensive reasons, so units can survive that initial burst of, for example, Esmifuyu or Eskaori, for example. So super vital unit, absolutely important to have for PvP, and she can just go max. Same with Miyako, she can also just go max, Kuka and Jun as well. For Miyako and Kuka, they're not really useful on attack at the moment, because our new meta, they just don't really have a place if you have the other good attack units. But still, for defense they're very strong, especially in combination together. However, soon they're kind of going to be a little bit displaced, because double tank teams kind of are about to be phased out as units become much stronger with 6 stars, and especially 6-star Reno, because the AoE pressure kind of makes it much easier to kill the rest of the team and then deal with tanks relatively quickly after that. So at the moment they're still very strong, kind of stonewall a lot of units even if they kill the rest of the team, but as we move further into the 6-star units, they are kind of falling off, because again, they're much easier to deal with on their own when the team is already dead. So, well, for them, rank 13 has a little bit more heal boost, but as usual, by now the extra def stats kind of outweigh the heal boost in every case, because the effective HP gained from the lower heal at rank 14 is still higher effectively than our 13 with the lower def. Jun is about to be phased out of CB use. Last CB was her last major use, where we in KC, so Kana Cold was the name for last CB, but it's actually Kasumi Cold, so we did get rank 1, and we did use the Jun as Tama team for C4 rather than the Ruka team, which a whole bunch of us farmed for in the expectation of using her, but ended up not using it because it was too inconsistent and too much of a pain to deal with, except for one time where we accidentally kind of black boxed while streaming this amazing team in action to the whole clan. So kind of a fail on that, but didn't matter in the end. So, but yeah, back to Jun. She's kind of being phased out for auto. You're probably still going to use her, kind of like Okuka, but in general, she's just not going to be used again in CB. So somewhat useful in PvP if you're liking other tanks, but in general, just not really all that good anymore. Okuka, a build 5-star Okuka, is actually very strong in PvP. Probably one of the best defensive tanks, right up there with 6-star Pekko, because she just goes into those insane heal loops with her UB, kind of like Jun used to do at release when she was 5-star. But for CB use, it's better to keep her low, because she's going to be one of the absolute crucial tanks for mage teams later on. And yeah, it's a bit dangerous to go all full out max with her. But yeah, if you don't care about that, it's fine to just go as hard as you like. But again, probably not the thing everyone can do, putting DA into a perm right after summer when there's so many units demanding TA, especially with limited UE and 6-star units where if you want them early it's going to be very expensive. Kaori, kind of like June, about to be phased out of CB use. Her position just is untenable at the moment. We kind of need a lot more shred now. Like CB19 is kind of the last CB where bosses have reasonable amounts of defense, but even then it's kind of already starting to have this mostly double mage meta, or not mostly but a lot of double mage meta, and for physical units there's enough that deal enough damage that we don't really need a pure DPS with a bad position like Kaori. Like Eriko is still a little bit better, and Estama is right up there. Kaori is one of the highest DPS units, but it just doesn't really matter because due to her positioning and how she works, the overall team damage just isn't there usually to justify using her, which is why she's now falling off. So yeah, still usable if you're liking other units, but for optimal teams I don't see her having a future from now on. New Yurei, pure PvP unit, and I think mostly on attack, just for the stun and for the immediate first action taunt. On defense, not really as good because there's much better tanks that don't need an external healer to be kept alive, but there are some use cases for her. In any case, still decent with S Saren, but yeah, meta is kind of hostile to her. But again, there's always going to be those defense teams where she just absolutely wrecks the whole strategy, and it's an easy win with her. So that's why I'm keeping her at SS ranking for offense. So, Pekko, our first 6-star in the list. For her, she kind of has a different boost than from her UE this time, because as a tank, she kind of always had that issue. She doesn't really have any utility. She doesn't do anything for the team. And her 6-star kind of leans more into that, where the damage multipliers on her UB are very high. Like they're, I think, the same as Jita. So what you get is a tank that on UB starts doing damage while also being tanky. Because how she works is on her UB, she first gains a P attack buff that's dependent on her HP value, so not percentage based but actual HP value based, and then her damage comes in, so she already benefits from the P attack buff on her UB. And obviously also she gains a bunch of death stats, which also helps. So if 6-star Pekko gets to first UB with high HP, what happens is that she starts putting out a lot more damage, and she also starts healing a lot more because her S1, the eating, where she heals and gains an absorption shield, also is based on P attack. So if Pekko isn't chunked, she will get a lot more chunky while also outputting more damage. So yeah, she has a lot of use cases, is a very strong defensive tank. Not a god tier unit, but certainly one of the most important units to have for defensive arena if you don't want to be hit by anyone and everyone very easily. Like, she's one of those tanks where if you don't deal with her, it's very difficult to penetrate through. And for her, R14 just fine. So now, Ruka, the sad one who didn't see use last CB unless you were giga rolling for her with a lot of accounts, but yeah. For CB, she's still used every now and then, but mostly on suboptimal teams until we see phase 4, because, well, in current phase 3, it's usually better to use like a tanking Makoto or S Makoto if you're using a physical team. Like, there's not much need for an actual tank, so that's why she's kind of not really used for a while, and all the bosses where she would be used, as other options that are better. But for phase 4, once that comes out, she kind of comes back in and has a role there, one at rank 8 in that weird comp for phase 4 Griffin, where she kind of excels at rank 8, but it's also usable at like rank 16, I think. but most of the build ones should just remain at rank 11, because that's where she has 0 dodge against current bosses without the mid-right piece of gear. But later on she can also be a bit higher, since we get another accuracy update where it's going to be another plus 15 accuracy in bosses, so 45 then, at which point higher ranks of Ruka are much better to be used, because for Ruka it's just a weird thing where if she knocks back at the wrong time or dodges incorrectly, the boss cycle can be disturbed and things just get very wonky in that case. So yeah, for her, unless you're building her for PvP, it's best to just keep her as is, keep farming the shards from current event, and yeah, that's it for her. Nozomin, kind of another one of those tanks who's starting to slowly fall off, because the support tanks aren't all that useful, but as a single tank she is very strong still, so in cases where you want to use that, she's very useful. And for her, it's just R14, not much more to say. Muimi, slightly falling off in CB, but thanks to having like multiple users and some utility to her, she's still going to be useful. Not the god tier DPS she was, but still she will see use, and for her it's R14. Not really much to min-max for her, but you can leave mid-left off if you like, otherwise it can just go on for PvP. Makoto kind of fell off very quickly from being on absolutely every team and only being on a couple teams or very few. But that's going to change after next CB, so which is CB19. We get the big PDEF and MDEF increase for all bosses in phase 3 especially. So at that point she's going to come back into most physical teams again. But for now she's not as important, still core, but not like the EX tier she was before. Yeah, in any case for her, the usual applies for most DPS units, where the mid-left piece should only be equipped if necessary. Since for rank 15 initially, there's also a chance she has to be used at rank 14 without the mid-left for kind of like the usual reasons with tankiness. But yeah, typically nothing really much to worry about. If it has to go on, it has to go on. That's just how it is. And Hyori R14, Oninon R13 or R14, this can both just be left as is, to be honest, because they don't see much use until they get their UE and come back swinging. Akino R14 as Makoto, now the new big girl, kind of replacing Makoto, aside from the multi-target 5th boss Glutton next CB, since she doesn't work on multi-target, but everywhere else she's basically the main shredder and one of the big damage dealers for most physical teams. So for her, absolutely crucial EX tier in CB in my opinion. And well, 14-4 or 14-5 for this one, I can already say there are some timelines where she doesn't need 14-5 to just keep alive at 5-star even, and others where she can stay 14-4 or needs 14-4 at certain stars to function. But yeah, for her it's just best leave it as is until CB and check which bosses you will hit, so you can either gear it or leave it off depending on what's needed. Matsuri 14-5, pretty good actually. She kind of is useful against certain strategies by jumping in, and especially her stun is really useful for some teams to have. Vieriko, just leave her as is. X-Ayane, just leave her as is. Mugi, either rank 13 or rank 14, depending on preference, but at the moment I think rank 14 is much better. Also, there is some talk already about CB20, where Mugi might want R9 for the best timelines, but I assume those going for it kept her at that anyway, and everyone else is already above that anyway, so yeah, not much to say about that. But for PvP, my opinion, R14 is best, and just keep it at that until the CB20 loop, where if we get the Lenica bug fixed, we can just move up to R15-0 and use the regular timelines for that. Hyori R14, Misogi R14, Ayane R12, Tamaki R14, Tobo R14, who is, by the way, still used and used more than Kaori now, which is kind of funny considering some people were saying she fell off very soon after release, which she absolutely didn't. Sama Tamaki R14, and for her the mid-left piece could be important to leave off. Not 100% sure, but there is at least one timeline she's used in next CB, and in that case the mid-left piece doesn't matter, so yeah, make of that what you will. In any case, she's one of the top DPS right now thanks to her UE, and she's still gotta be used a bunch more times since she has her niche, and she's gonna have that forever when you need to TP drain bosses. Edicor, as sad as it is, there is still the R13 use case sometimes, and there are a few, very few timelines where you can't really borrow R13, which is really annoying because the damage loss from having to run R13 is pretty high. So R14 is mostly what she's used at, just because R13 Eriko can't really keep up with some of the other high DPS units, and a lot of timelines can be adjusted for R14 with basically the same damage as R13. And for both, obviously also mid-left only if needed. Or if it doesn't make any difference. In that case it can also just go on. Espeko R14, still very good in PvP, but does require max UE and 5-star to really put in work. Kurumi R14 on defense, really good at the moment because she kind of helps hit those breakpoints against certain cleave teams where units survive and clap back. Jita R14, really absolutely important unit now. TP is just so good. Rei R14, Shizuru R14, Chrissy R14, again mid-left either off or on, but for her it doesn't really matter as much, she has a good cycle in any case. Ex-Kurumi R14, Mimi R14, Shinobu R14 when in active use. Anyone who still kept her lower probably doesn't need to be told, so yeah, if you're iceboxing her for some reason, just keep doing it. I have a couple odds where that is too, but I haven't found any use for it yet, so let's keep hoping, guys. Vishizu, mostly R12. I don't think I've seen any R9 use yet. I'm still keeping it on one account, but mostly I think it's just going to be R12 for her until the end of time, or in this case rank boost, where she's not really used anymore anyway. Mahiru R14, Yukari, can be basically any one of the 3 ranks depending on where she went to, but in my opinion, as much as possible, everyone should keep theirs R12 at the moment. That's kind of the main rank that works for most timelines. R13 kind of the middle in between rank if you need her to be tanky, which she can be kept at, because for R14 I really think going up there you only want to have bottom left, bottom right as much as possible, so keeping her at R13 for tankiness, and then if needed moving up to R14-1. But ideally still just R12. That's, I think, the most versatile tank for her, rank for her. Monica R14, Ninon R14, Mifuyu R14, Ilya R14 as well, and with her the midlife thing, she does get the TP boost armor for mages, but with her it's the usual issue where you want to manipulate her tankiness in weird ways, because sometimes she needs to be less tanky to take more damage and get her UB faster, but other times she does need the extra tankiness to survive more crits. So it's just weird as usual, and best to just leave it as is until she's used in CB and you know exactly which one you want. As Kaori, just R14, smashes things to bits, but I think at this point people kind of starting to figure out how to work against her. And work with her for that matter. In any case, yeah. As Cody R14, and she will see use, I think, next CB on A5 because that's multi-target and it's going to be good to hit with physical teams. Saren R14, or if you are iceboxing for Niaru meta, just keep her as is. Anna R14, and she doesn't care about UE, so can just go max on the mid left part. Shinobu R14, kind of fell off now, but even with new cleavers, her single target nuke is pretty decent on defense, so she's still usable depending on how your teams look. Esmifuyu, still absolute powerhouse, R14, and yeah, I think it's become pretty obvious why she's that good. And also, kind of like Eskaori, she can use next CB on A5 because it's multi-target. So now, the big one, as in the big brain damage inducing unit Kokoro. So for Kok, it's kind of difficult because next CB we're going to see loops, but the issue here is she needs to be very low in terms of tankiness. Even R10-1 with only 4-star refine on top right has some issues, even if she's max level, which is 142 at the moment. So anyone higher than that kind of has to go lower in level. So for now, I really recommend not touching her aside from putting her to 6-star, because even like 10-2 with top left and top right at 5-star refine can break from just being current max level. So it's kind of cringe, but unavoidable if you want to run the CB19 C5 loops. So yeah, as sad as it is for PvP, it's best to just keep iceboxing her at the moment until all the timelines are finalized, because Global has a slightly different X Chica than CN, so you can't expect to one-to-one copy all the timelines. So I really recommend wait until CB if you want to learn loops, to then put your Kokoro at the optimal level. Until then, it's just too risky in my opinion. Everyone else who's already higher probably can go to R13 or R14 depending on need. R13 kind of slightly better because you can still go up to R14, but from R14 you can't go down, so that's that. There will also be a build at R11 for special Kokoro against C4, but you'll see when the time comes, and that's something for clans to do probably, because most likely it's going to be on a sacrificial or PvP account where it doesn't matter anyway. Ayumi, we finally have her UE and also her shards, which is nice. Most people don't really know how to deal with her yet, because in most brackets there weren't very many Ayumi users. So I'm gonna say she's pretty good until everyone figures out how to just work against her and counter her and just kind of ignore her. But yeah, for her, R14 is very good. Loses TP boost, gains TP retain compared to R11, but R11 is so squishy and weak. There's not really any point in having it. Greya, R14, as Kokoro, I must say, kind of icebox. In terms of rank, it doesn't matter, but UE and EX should be kept as is, because as JP has shown, 6-star as Kokoro when she comes is an absolute powerhouse, and she does want that UE at low level for that. Same with EX. Rem, R12 or R14, kind of hard to keep R12 for the accuracy, because just R14 the stats are much higher now, but yeah, it's personal decision. If you use Rem, you probably know what you're doing anyway. Ram, R14, just better. Rin, kind of either keep CP Icebox at R10 for no dodge, but I don't think she's really used much anymore, so most likely she can just go R14 for PvP use. Mitsuki, R14, just very simple, max her. Akari, kind of icebox. She was used last CB, and in the timeline I made sure there's provisions for rank 14, rank 12, rank 11, and I think rank 13 also worked for the most part, but those should have just gone up to rank 14 in my opinion. So yeah, for Akari, basically anything you can have at the moment still functions. Like even if she's R14 fully maxed, there's going to be use cases for that when she needs to tank, but if possible, just keep her R11 as low as possible, since that's kind of the most versatile in terms of you can still go up, but you can also do the R11 timelines when needed. For Yori, R14, very simple, as Siren, keep as is at the moment. We're going to see more of those timelines where you want R14 as Siren for the interactions with TP charges, where she can just get her second and subsequent UBs one action earlier than R9 without incoming damage, but obviously R9 is going to get more rare as we move on, so if you can keep her R9, that's going to be good. But I already know people who do PvP are not going to want to keep her R9, so the true CB mains will prevail and be the R9 slaves. H Miyako, R14, Arisa, R14, Anne, R14, but as a mage, R14 3 most likely. Mages get a new TP boost armor with rank 14 mid left, and that gives TP until it's 3-star refine. So going over that just as tank stats and not much else. So ideally, especially for a support unit like Anne, where you want a UB at specific time in the game, I think it's best to just keep it at 3-star. There's no timeline I know about where she needs it higher, and the extra damage increase just isn't worth the risk of having her brick for other timelines later. Lu, keep Icebox for now. Her time will come soon. Neneka, the new goddess, who is just absolutely amazing both in CB and PvP. For her it's another case, kind of like Anne, but much more long term than Anne, because Anne can go up kind of more than Neneka, because for her the personal damage is a bit higher than her support value with UB, but for Neneka most of her value comes from UB, and especially if you want to keep using her later on with Nyaru, it's going to be really important to have her at rank 14. So my advice, absolutely do not refine the mid left above 3-star. Keep her 3-star for now until CB, where some will need to go up to 4-star and one for 5-star for burrow purposes. And also don't read Bond 4 at the moment, it gives MDEF, which could lead to some issues every now and then later on. So yeah, for her I think she's a unit absolutely worthy of being min-maxed, because she's so powerful and she's going to be used basically every CB for a long time. So yeah, try to keep her usable as much as possible, especially since she does have the possibility of having to be used below max level, and in those cases it's going to be really annoying if you have to go down another level just because you have like a Bond 4 for example. So yeah, most of the time she's going to be usable anyway. Like, there exist timelines for her at any stars for most bosses. You're going to lose damage, so not a big deal, but those few times where absolutely critical timelines require very specific Neneka builds, it's going to be annoying if you can't hit those. TROE, we are going to see TROE today, if this video goes according to plan, and is the backline shredder with even less damage than Makoto, but a kind of more shred depending on what happens, and a very good position. Before UE she's not really going to be used as much, but after UE she's one of the primary shredders, especially against certain CB bosses where her position is important. She's just, there's nothing really to replace her. So for now I don't think, unless you're rank chasing and also a whale, it's worth pulling her. because as shown previously, like clans like mine who continuously go for rank 1, we want a couple of those for specific routes, but everyone else, she's just luxury. So don't break her account by pulling her. But she's nice to have. You won't have to farm her, but before her main uses, it will be possible to just farm her node, since she's kind of like Anne, where she gets an event relatively early on, and getting her shards isn't as difficult. So, Reno, R14, not much to say at the moment, 6-star waiting room now. Susanna, R14, Susanna, also R14, Shiori, R14, Yo, R14, mage armor with TP really helps her, SEO for CB, Icebox, R14 for PvP, Suzume, R14, Emilia, R14 or Icebox, depending on what you did. Most people who pulled her probably built her, but those few who kept her Icebox will be able to use a very specific timeline later on once, which is kind of funny and nice. Kasumi, just the usual Icebox build for Nyaru, and those who just don't care about CB and are going pure PvP can just do R14. Very nice on attack, especially if 5-star and fully maxed out, but even without that, she's still very usable. Misato, gonna keep as is. She's gonna be important for CP19 loops. The most important part, UB level 127 or lower. Very important. Also gonna see use at 3-star for those like me who made accounts specifically with that. But in terms of stats, I think the only limit is like 14.4. Like with max UE, you can be at most 14.4. So if yours is Gigamax from last CB, don't gear the midlife piece, otherwise she won't be able to be used for loops. Nanaka, R14. With her, like the other mages, mid-left should only be refined to 3, but for her I don't think it matters as much, so if you want to min-max, it's fine to fully refine that if all your timelines can work with 14.5 full refine. New Year Yui, R12 or R11, just depending on where yours is at the moment. I think last CB was one where almost every NUE got touched, mine as well. She went from a very low S1 to max S1, but yeah, that should be fine from now on, and just keep her R12 or R11 depending on which one yours is at the moment. Kyaru, so now the third of our new 6 stars. For her it's 14.5 as well. She will see use against B5 and for some people against C5 as well. She's very strong. In CB she's just for multi-target, thanks to having like decent damage and utility and just being generally like overall solid. And in PvP on attack she's kind of the first unit who can deal with the TP on a whole team. Like she doesn't drain it or anything, but she stops generation from unit kills and from starting actions. So yeah, she can really help those matchups where UBs are very important and where otherwise it would get very dicey. So yeah, once her UB goes off, some matchups are just 1 and her damage isn't anything to sneeze at either, especially if you pair her with like a Kasumi, for example, where she can kind of just nuke whole teams because they're at 0 MDF. Hatsune, R14, Misaki, R14, still very good, kind of the frontline nuker. X-Chica, just keep iceboxed, but for next CB, that's going to be, I think, maybe two or 3 builds for her, depending on which boss and which specific timeline. For those, I think best to just wait until they come out, or until you know exactly which one you're using and have figured them out yourselves, because X-Chica on global again doesn't work like on CN, because CN had her functioning like after UE, global has her functioning as normal before UE. There's some subtle differences, but they do require some care, so don't preemptively build her for no good reason. As Suzume, either Icebox or R13 or R14. Personally, I think R14 is best for defensive reasons because she does survive certain cleavers much better at R14. Very strong unit on defense. As Chiaro, R14, just like all the other mages with 3-star refine. Aoi, R14, Chica, either Icebox or just R11. There's not really much point in using her, but yeah, just keep her as is until she gets used in CB22. As Maho, R14 with the Mage 3-star refine on mid left. Maho, keep Iceboxed. Yui, keep Iceboxed. Yuki, either 14-5, just fully max for PvP, or keep Iceboxed for fringe Nyaru stuff. It really is fringe, so I wouldn't fault anyone for just Giga Maxing him for PvP because he is very strong at the moment. So Kyoka, last of the mages with the 3-star refine on mid left because it's beneficial to her, but for her it's not really as important compared to, like, say, an Esmaho, because for her the UB isn't as important as the Ice Lance. However, if you can hit a UB where it's easier to hit the Ice Lance at the end, or where you need the early UB to generate enough speed up to a cycle to get the last Ice Lance, then it's crucial, so still worth min-maxing that. But if it turns out there is no timeline where it's needed, then it can also go up to 5, because I think there is some M crit on that, so it does scale her very well. And H. Misaki, R14, and for her also very nice, she gets the TP boost armor, so she lives another day as a useful mage in kind of every mode of PvP. So that's it for this time's gear. I hope you learned a bit and got a better idea of some of the units we have at the moment and how they're used and why they're built the way they are. If there's any questions, you can put them in the comments, but ideally just contact me directly because I don't always log into my YouTube account and read those. So if it takes a while for me to get back to you, don't worry, I'm probably just not logging in as frequently as I want to. So in any case, hopefully I can make a nice overview video for next CB relatively soon. And yeah, see you then. Bye bye.